internet personality Gonzaki, and this is the Tired Gin Gaming Podcast. Damn you people. Damn you people to hell.
We love you.
And why
Look
do
at
you
the
have all the
clock.
gin?
Alright, let's get to business. Greenheart Games, the makers of Game Dev Tycoon, have decided to fight piracy with piracy. They took their game, made a cracked version with nice inverted quotes around it, and or whatever, and they put it up on the Pirate Bay, and people could download it, and people did download it, and well, there's a certain part in the game where if you're playing the normal store-bought version, you will get noted about piracy, and you can choose how you're going to respond to it. In the pirated version, when you get to that point, you can't do anything about it. You go bankrupt due to piracy. Ha 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 ha. Now, the really funny part was on forums on Steam and other places, people were asking how they could fix this, like, how do I stop the piracy? It's making me bankrupt. Can I research DRM? Yada yada yada. Completely oblivious to the irony, and pretty hilarious. They got the numbers of online players. 93% of first day players of the game were pirates, and I think this is a very clever stunt, very good publicity. The internet is abuzz with this, better publicity than they could have asked for, and a tad naive, because they are sweating the piracy numbers a bit, and they shouldn't really be, because they are a startup company. People do not take risks, especially in this economy, even with the $8 that it costs to buy the game. You're a new company, you have no games under your belt, you can't expect people to buy your game, or you can't expect a lot of people to buy your game on day one.
But this game is impressive. Like, after you played it, Jin, and told me that it was addicting and pretty much like video game crack, and I heard more people playing it and saying I can't stop playing this. I was like, okay, it's $7. What's $7 to me? Ooh, $7 is I don't get a coffee tomorrow morning. Sounds fantastic. So went and bought it, and it really is addicting to play, and it's fun. And I think that their way of fighting piracy by having something like that and then waiting to see how many people, when they complain about, how do I stop this? There has to be a way around this. And then they go, oh. And that realization of them realizing it is a great move on their part, because it, in a way, for people who pirate things all the time, it's teaching them somewhat a lesson of this is what you're doing to small companies. I mean, I will openly admit that there was a point where I took games that I'd heard mixed reviews on and gotten a pirated copy of them, and if I didn't like them, deleted it. Was like, okay, I'm not going to buy it. If I liked it, I went out and bought the copy, because it's like, okay, this is something I'm going to invest my time in and I'm going to be playing a lot, so I'll buy it. I've done that. And there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with doing that, because it's the same as getting a demo, but the demos nowadays are so small, sometimes you can't get a good enough picture of what you're purchasing from that demo.
Fun example of that, actually, PS Vita game called Gravity Rush. I wanted to see if that game was worth buying. I downloaded the demo, and apparently I blazed through it, but the demo only lasted for 3 minutes. Not enough time for me to want to even formulate an opinion on the gameplay.
Here's
So-
you can finally use this.
Yeah.
LOL, what?
Here's the thing, because we're talking about game demos, and I'm thinking, why not do what Nintendo did with the Wind Waker? If anybody, for example, I had the Zelda Collector's Edition disc, and it had a Wind Waker demo on it. It was the same demo that ran like in stores, where you had three, whether you wanted to start whether you wanted the dungeon demo, this or that, and they gave you half an hour. The thing was, you were not limited. You could do whatever you wanted in the game for that half hour. Did you get in? Did you do the dungeon? If you, for example, if you pick the dungeon demo, you could run outside the dungeon, run backwards in the town, get on your boat, sail. Same thing at the town. You could jump in your boat and sail to the nearest island if you wanted to. You were not limited to a specific area in that demo. They just gave you a half-hour time limit and said go.
Mhm.
And
I
you got
wish
true
we could get
sense.
more demos like that because a lot of companies already treat the demo like a chance to preload their game onto your machine, giving you most, if not all, of the game with a bit of code on it that limits it. So why not do something like that? Put a time limit on it. Um, Now, the answer to that one depends on the game. I
Do
think the biggest one I can shine a light on is the game Mirror's Edge.
Yeah.
The demo for that game was amazing, but in that demo, you play the best 30 minutes of the game, if it's even 30 minutes. It might have been 15, 20. But in that demo, you play the best bit of the game. Then you go and buy the game, and once you get to the demo bit, it's really fun, and then you get out of it, and it's not fun anymore. It's a bit of clever, not quite false advertisement in a lot of cases.
My thing is going back to the original topic. When I don't know how many people who played the actual game of Game Dev Tycoon realized, like, because like you said, they flocked to the forums going, hey, is there a way to stop this, blah blah blah, is there a way to get this from stop happening, nah, 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 nah. I wonder how many people stopped and thought, wait a minute.
I don't think as many.
Oh.
I don't think as many did that as they thought, and there'll be there'll be a few. They'll change a few people's mind, but I think the vast majority of pirates are going to be unfazed, slightly annoyed. Some will laugh. I don't think it's really going to change the amount of people who buy their games. I think most of the goodwill they're seeing in game sales is from people like me who saw the stunt, said, "Hey, that's clever. Here's $8."
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be an interesting game, but then again, you have people like me who don't have $8, so we'll just listen to people who do have $8 talk about it.
Anyway, moving on. Um, Aliens Colonial Marines. Fun story here. They are being sued by a plaintiff, Damien Perrine, um, being his law firm is Edelson LLC of I believe Southern California. They are citing that the unrepresentative trade show demonstrations that Gearbox put on is responsible for a lot of people pre-ordering this game and then getting shafted when it turned out to not be very good. Now, this is going to be difficult because I do think that Gearbox and Sega should be held responsible for this game releasing in the state it was. But at the same time, it would set a very bad precedent because how would you how exactly would you hold a company culpable when their demonstrations don't match the finished product?
They never do.
Well, they never do, but normally the games are better than the demos, or at least you hope they are, whereas the demo they showed there was not even remotely close. It didn't show anything that was in the finished game. But how would you get what I'm trying to say? It's hard to put into words, but it's that situation of suing a company that didn't do anything wrong simply because it's been done in the past.
So, I get what you're trying to ask, and to try to put it into words, you're asking how is it that you can sue a company for putting out a tech demo at a con, and that tech demo being a really good tech demo, only to have the game, when it comes out for release, be completely and utterly shafted.
Exactly, but how do you...
How do you make a lawsuit of that? The
Exactly,
answer is
because
can't. I don't think you can, at least.
Yeah, because it brings into the question: are those tech demos advertising of the game? Because obviously the makers of the games are going to say no, they're not, but that's because they're hiding their own assets. But if you think about it, they really are. They put that out there to build up as much hype as possible to get people talking about what they saw in the tech demo.
I'm gonna look up something really quick while I explain my whole thought on this. I got to play the Colonial Marines multiplayer demo at PAX Prime last year, so for 2012. And the thing with that specifically is that it was beautiful. The game mode that we played is the escape mode that you see on there now, but it was a lot more refined and I don't even know how to really. It was better. It was a lot better. There weren't as many glitches when it came to the graphics and how everything was functioning. So it was just kind of frustrating to see all of this stuff and see the new game come out. What I was trying to look for is on PAX's website how they explain when you're registering to be an exhibitor what it is, but considering everyone knows that PAX is like the best way to advertise your soon to be released games. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, why else, if it's not advertising, would it be open to the general public? Would you have competing for space and the size of the billboards and how many people go here, there, or wherever in order to do all of these things? Like, how can you not consider that advertising?
Exactly, which is why I find it a very difficult lawsuit because that is advertisement, yet I don't think they should entirely be held responsible for it, and that becomes the big question. And I guess the court is going to make the decision for us on how it's um, supposed to be
Yeah.
dealt with.
Well, here's the thing with tech demos, because we're going back to our previous subject of discussion, which was about demos in and of itself, because we were talking about that for a while. But what happens is, now correct me if I'm wrong. This is the impression I get with a lot of tech demos, is that they're kind of demos of the game, but they're not like taking a portion of the game and bringing it out. They're creating the tech demo by itself, and that's why it's so polished. It's not like they took a portion of the game, said, "Hey, this is really polished. Let's put it out there." They're taking something that is like the game they're shooting for, made it really polished for the event, and then put it out there. But then they never really put it into the game as a whole.
You got a point there. I guess we should make the distinction between because what they did at E3 wasn't exact. What we keep saying tech demo, but it wasn't a tech demo because a tech demo is showing off new technology. An example is when the Wii came out, they were showing off what a Zelda game would look like on the Wii. That is a tech demo because it's a pre-rendered thing. There's no one playing it, or there's someone standing there pretending to play it. Whereas what was with Colonial Marines was just a demo. They showed it off during the thing like a tech demo, and then they let people try it to play for themselves to build up hype for the game.
Okay, so let's throw everything on the table that we can here. Let's say this thing does go through the court system, and say they make a case of it. What happens when let's say this plaintiff wins. Let me back this up real quick. Let's say this plaintiff wins this case against Sega and Gearbox. What happens when you have games that come out that are shown at these places like E3, like PAX, other places that are big cons, and they end up in that category of Aliens Marines? What happens then when you have these kinds of cases that come out against those games later on down the road.
Eddie's right. It's setting a bad precedent.
Exactly.
And here's another thing is because I remember when Felicity was doing the stream of Aliens Colonial Marines, and there was information. I actually went and checked it out. I kind of really feel bad for uh, Gearbox right now because they're essentially in a position of darned if I did, darned if I didn't, because they wanted to. Because I remember reading an article with I think it was one of the executives of the company, and he basically said that they had shipped it out, they had outsourced part of it to another company, and they did squat, and they really wanted a good game, and they wanted an extension, but Sega threatened to sue them if they didn't get the game out on time. So they ended up putting out a really crappy game, and now they're getting sued anyway because they put out a crappy game. They're in a lose-lose situation.
Well, think of it this way. They had 7 years to work on the Colonial Marines. When it was initially put out, they decided Sega contracted them to make the game, and they contracted another company to make the game while they worked on Borderlands. And then that company indeed did not do the work they were contracted to do, or did not do enough work, so they shipped it back to Gearbox, and then Gearbox ships it out to 3 more companies so it can work on Borderlands 2. Now, the other companies are indeed culpable for this, but Gearbox is just as culpable because they had the chance to give it their best shot, and they chose to work on their own original IP. Now, Borderlands and Borderlands 2 were massively successful, so they can probably or easily withstand a loss from Colonial Marines lawsuit. But it shows you where their priorities were. But moving on, Nintendo has decided to sell refurbished DSi's and 3DS's on its online stores. You can pick up one of these for, it'll have a 1-year warranty with high standards of refurbishing. They say higher than the retailers of Best Buy and GameStop. And from the pricing I'm looking at least $20 less than you'd expect to see at Best Buy or GameStop. $99.99 on DSi, and DSi XL specifically, or $129.99 on a 3DS. I see on this itself, I see it as a bit of a short-term profit grab by Nintendo, because it allows them to make money off of DSs that were defective and they fixed up, and they get more DSs out there into people's hands so that those people will be more likely to buy games. But I brought this up mainly, I wasn't going to talk about it itself until Eddie sent me a Game Informer article talking about what a horrible idea it was that Nintendo was doing this, because they're going to tick people off. And they never, I found it very telling that Game Informer never mentioned GameStop. They were always bringing up Best Buy when talking, because they were trying to avoid the obvious bias they had in this issue. Because if you don't know, it's kind of obvious, but Game Informer is owned by GameStop. They have a lot invested in you thinking it's a stupid idea for Nintendo to do this. And their big reason is why this was stupid is places that refurbish will just stop selling Nintendo products. So there, And I want to point this one out to Game Informer, GameStop, Best Buy. There is one store in this country that will never stop selling Nintendo products. Nintendo products have proven to be one of the ultimate cash cows, and this store loves cash cows, and that is Walmart. So long as Walmart exists, Nintendo will be fine, which is why, unlike what Game Informer said, other companies are not going to stop selling Nintendo products, even if they do offer their own products that undercut the retailers. And another point, who goes to the Nintendo store anyway? I don't think GameStop has much to worry about here.
My thing with it is very much a bias on Game Informer's part because Game Informer was bought out by GameStop to be their exclusive magazine, which is why anybody that's been to GameStop when they offer you a Power Up Pro card, always try to tag on and you get 12 months of Game Informer for free, which I will admit is an awesome deal if you like reading Game Informer because you do get it for a lot cheaper than buying it issue by issue. But the only place you can buy it is at GameStop. So it's not, it's all an internal thing. They don't ship it out to Walmart, which if they really wanted to make Game Informer a popular thing and get more money off of it, they would. But that's a discussion for another time.
I'm actually kind of
It's
surprised that GameStop or Game Informer still does the physical copies, and the only reason I can feasibly think of them doing it is because people buy those membership cards for the benefits they have. Because
well,
I used to be a really avid reader of Game Informer before they were owned by GameStop, but I noted over the years their content has become more bland, more corporatized, and at this point I've noticed, as I've said with E3, Game Informer just isn't relevant anymore.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's a thing that. Sorry, Bulba, go ahead.
yeah, one of the things I noticed when I had my free 12-month subscription is I noticed there's a very, very strong anti-Nintendo bias in Game Informer. So I would read Nintendo Power at that time for the Nintendo stuff and Game Informer for everything else. And I noticed that there's a very heavy. They really didn't report on Nintendo things in the first place. They acted like they didn't exist.
Yeah, if you go through the years, actually, their biases would, after they were acquired by big game developers, their biases would rotate depending on who was trying to screw over GameStop at the moment, which every game manufacturer is trying to screw over GameStop because GameStop is collectively, it's screwing them over collectively. And that's a big thing I want to note here is GameStop can complain that they're being undercut, but when they take in, we win a test here. They sell a used, refurbished 3DS up there for $159.99, $10 less than a new one. We took my brothers up to see how much they would give us for it if we decided to trade it in. $80, little less than $80. So they take it in, they clean it up. So long as nothing's busted on it, they turn it around and they double their money back on a used game console. And they didn't make anything. All they did was, in most cases, clean it up, spend a tad on the cloth and polish needed to make the thing shine. So, if anything, Nintendo is doing a big service to gamers by undercutting them, because even at $129.99 for a 3DS, GameStop would be making a nice, tidy profit on their the used ones they brought in, even if they continued selling them or buying them back for the 80, which they wouldn't do. They would probably drop that down to around 60 or 50.
Yeah. And see, like, you can see in the article, if you go and read it, it does show a print, like, when it says GameStop, parentheses, disclosure, Game Informer is owned by GameStop, in parentheses. If you're not someone who knows that GameStop owns Game Informer, that's a pointless thing to put in an article. So, why even have it in there to begin with, other than to say, yeah, we're trying not to be freaking biased here?
Now, the article itself ticked me off, but it wasn't the article so much as the fans. The Game Informer has a fan base that, when you read the comments on that article, you can tell that they are rabid and they don't care what the truth is because they live in a bubble, and that is a whole nother can of worms with gamers for another day. We don't have enough time to cover it.
We
But,
don't, but you can
We
go
should
on the site.
we should just do a each of us choose a certain specific rant we want to get out and we discuss episode one of these days.
that might
We'll
be a
do it.
special.
Good, yes. Good idea. I like that.
Moving on to the Project Durango, the 720. New rumors coming out about it on how the always-on DRM would work, stating that the option is on or the way it would work is the dev would have the controls on it. They would have one of three options. Either their game would be always on, what I like to call the EA. Their game would be a one-time check-in, the which is what we've been advocating for, and then no DRM at all, which, if anything, I advocate more than the one-time check-in. Putting that in the hands of the publishers would be, if this is true, that would be a good idea on Microsoft's point, because then they would they'd be hanging the publishers their own rope while being the rope salesman. Now, the big thing thought here is that this might be an attempt to, instead of just trying to piss people off with always on, it might be more that of a disrupting the used game market, firing all barrels at GameStop, because, as I said, GameStop makes a lot of money while making no product of their own. They provide a service, and their profits are gigantic on that service. And like I said, they're screwing over the developers. I don't care about the publishers. It's about the developers in this case. And after playing Game Dev Tycoon, I can tell you it is just from digital experience, it is painful. Now, the other idea is, I was considering this. Might this increase piracy on this console, specifically on games that have the always on DRM? Because we have shown in the past that any DRM can be cracked, always on or no. Wouldn't this, if it had this always on DRM on a lot of its games, it seems to me like this would become a pirate box, similar to what is going on with all of the consoles now. You have offline versions of them that are pirates, but I think this one might be the one that, if they were to pull something like this, would just concentrate the pirates, as they attempted to screw over these publishers very specifically.
Oh, that one's actually a good question, because depending on how it plays out, we won't know anything till May 21st, or potentially 2 weeks later for E3, of what this console will be capable of. But Felicity, you go. I will formulate thoughts later.
I think we're more than likely, with the DRM issues, both for the PS4 and for this one specifically, that brain not working, that they're not going to release anything until E3. If Microsoft jumps the gun and does it earlier, that gives more time to get feedback, though, because then they're going to hear 2 weeks before E3 feedback from their fans and all of their stuff to see, hey, this is what our fans want and what they want to do. Are we going to lose a ton of customers doing that? That'd be the smart thing to do, but sadly, I doubt that they're going to do that. Same thing with PS4. I would love to see that it's either, if they're going to have an always on DRM thing, that it be a one-time check-in, but I'd prefer to not have it at all, because you don't need it, because it's, we've all talked about this before. There's a lot of issues for people who have a horrible internet connection that may drop on a regular basis, or people that don't have internet at all, so they won't be able to do those types of check-ins to be able to play the games. And the other thing is that there are, and I hate to talk about this after talking about that great, bit of piracy, like, education that one company did at the start of the podcast. This one now You're going to see a lot of people with, Project Durango or 720, whatever they're going to call the next gen Xbox system. Um, you're probably going to see an emulator come out real fast if there's an always on DRM, and you're going to see a lot of the games starting to have really crummy or fairly decent rips to that emulator for people to play on their PCs, because people aren't going to want to deal with that DRM issue. Because who wants to do that? I'm sorry, I hated at my old job how the fact that every purchase that I made was tracked. They knew every single item that I bought, so that if I came in with something that was not on that list but obviously came from the store, then they could go, so where'd you get this? Was it stolen? Things like that. Like, it's DRM kind of feels like that to me, where it's kind of big brothery. There's enough piracy precautions that are already on the Xbox. I'm not sure about the PS4 or the PS3, but on the current Xbox, there's enough piracy protections that you don't have to worry about that. So why would you put an always on DRM onto the Xbox?
Like I said, I think it's a big swing at the used game market. And on that note, I want to introduce a new little weekly segment I want to do. Try and get some thought going out there. This will be the question of the week. I want listeners to answer this, just to prove that people are listening this far into the podcast. Bulba, Eddie, yeah, just critical thinking, answer the question. I'll pick the best answer over the course of the week. And here's the question. What would the gaming industry look like without used games? Like, just take a bit to think of all of the sectors, because you've got your Game Informers, your GameStops, your developers, your consoles, your PCs, etc. Try and suss that out. I have a general idea in my head, but I don't know if it's correct. I want to get other people's input on this.
So we're getting asked in the little thing here, do we answer now?
No.
That'll be next week.
Yeah, I prefer it to be written out.
Aye, Captain.
You mean we're not going to even answer it at the beginning of the next podcast? For shame.
For shame.
It'll be answered at the. Or I will, like I said, I will read what I believe is the best answer at the beginning of the next podcast.
Well, can't we also give like our opinion at the end?
You can. I don't care. Anyway, we have been the Gaming Booth. Like, subscribe, comment, tell us we're dumb, tell me I have a bad haircut. I do.
You always have a bad haircut.
Eddie's bold.
Internet personality Gonzaki. Play us out, Eddie.
They keep asking me to dance us out, so I hope you guys are tuning in. Please tune in next week. Please tune in next week.
My ears are bleeding.
Oh, God.